Dr. Joseph Martin. Donna Galenko is my Mohawk name. Peace, power, righteousness. A basic call to consciousness. This is actually then the third in, it's not a series, but throughout all the videos I've done on our Kayenerehkowen, the Great Law of Peace, as we call it in Mohawk. Also on Deganawida, who is our great peacemaker, our peace chief, our greatest peace chief. He actually is peace, power, and righteousness himself. And he has appeared in all the First Nations of the world over the last 2,000 years. So in your culture, you may have references to him. Peace, power, and righteousness. Let me read a little something about what this is and how important this is. Only by taking responsibility for ourselves can we have any real power over ourselves and any real peace. Only a culture of personal accountability can sustain and preserve a civilized society. Our basic choice to think or not to think, to be responsible or irresponsible, reflects the essence of what it means to be human. Now, I'd like to suggest that peace, power, and righteousness actually is an individual choice. Although we will be talking, of course, about the fact that individuals and groups need to come together around peace. And also to say about human nature that we know that we have two sides of everything in ourselves, the ability to create peace in our mind and hearts, or the ability to have absolute terror, anxiety, fear, and chaos in our minds and hearts as individuals. And what we do as individuals, and on one at a time, will have a concatenation or an additive effect for small groups, including families, communities, neighborhoods, ethnic groups, nations, religions, and eventually the whole persons of the world. So the opposites is something we need to take account of in ourselves. So the opposite of peace would be the need to be aggressive and warmongering. And I'd like to say here at this point that within this archetype of peace and war that has been struggling within the heart and soul of every single human being since time immemorial, millions of years ago, when our ancient ancestors were living here and trying to fend off others and try to find a living for themselves, living in the sense of just food and shelter and fire and warmth and clothing they made from animal skins. So the archetype that has been ruling our nations for probably millions of years is the warrior archetype, and there is a necessity for us to re-engage this process of re-archetypalizing our human nature. There's a good word for us. In turning the warrior archetype through inner peace and transformation of our consciousness, and more of this in part two, to find that place of highest consciousness inside yourself, to re-transform the warrior, the aggressive, killing, murderous warrior that still seems to be rampant on the planet in every quadrant of our globe, into the spiritual peacemaker. Hence, our emphasis on the peacemaker, not just Deganawide, but yourself as a peacemaker with power and righteousness. So that's the basic call to action here into consciousness, is to find that peacemaker within yourself, and more of that in part two to follow soon. Now, power, what does that mean? Power means complete self-empowerment. It means self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, but in an authentic, responsible, respectful, even spiritual way. It's the spiritual power that comes when the soul is alive and awake within your mind, your heart, and your body and consciousness, and always making the choices and the courage to change. This power can be opposed to the more egotistical, greedy, selfish force or control and domination that many totalitarian regimes uh, and military, in fact, as well, in the military industrial complex, seem to use on the planet still today. So the inner intention or sway to use force, domination, control over anyone around you, including yourself, your pets, your family, your spouse, your neighbors, all that needs and can be through call to consciousness to empower yourself to the higher road of spirituality, light, kindness, respect, love, and responsibility for self and others. Righteousness, I think, is self evident as a term. We understand that the opposite of that would be evil, greediness, selfishness, and just lack of ethics and morality and integrity. These are always present within ourselves as human beings, myself included, all of us. And it does take effort to grab a hold of this and make the choices that we know would be best for us in our own personal evolution. Now, let me go back then, having said all this, to the fact of our ancestors. My ancestors woke me up again through some dreams last night and asked that I share this again today with you, which is why we have peace, power, and righteousness as a theme for today's first part of this video. The ancestors, let me read you something from the Kayenerehkowen, and this is our great law of peace for the Haudenosaunee of the Mohawk. Today I suddenly became aware of your voices sounding across the forest, approaching, moving across barriers. You saw, in coming, traces of them, our ancestors, as if just barely it is becoming ominous, for smoke should still be rising at the place where they used to smoke in peace, and where formerly we gained wisdom. There, as you came, you saw numerous signs of our ancestors. Now, our ancestors, whichever backgrounds you come from on planet Earth, they always exist inside our psyches. They are one with our souls. They sing to us from the depths of the afterlife and from the underworld. And they call to us to redeem themselves and to redeem the earth and all our relations, Mitakuyo Yasin, and to redeem ourselves, in fact, from this place of desperate, ominous treachery and warfare that seems to be increasing on the planet day by day here in early September 2014. These ancestors are our hope, they're our call to conscience and consciousness, and they are the ones who are asking us to be the caretakers of the earth and the redeemers of all our relations, and to do the inner work to transform into spiritual peacemakers through the peace walk and through true power of the heart and love and through righteousness of respect and kindness. Now, I'd like to say, because this is, we've talked a lot about the Mohawk here in the Kayenerehkowen, that within the last 40 years or so on the planet, it actually was the Mohawk people of Kanesatake or Oka, Quebec, where in fact I lived for 18 years and did my PhD at the University of Toronto in anthropology on an ethnography of the Kanesatake Mohawk and a deep history, a cultural, spiritual history. They, for 71 days in 1990, there was a war there between the Mohawks and the local people who wanted to put another 9 holes of golf in. And it became such a conflagration that the OPP, the Sûreté du Québec, and also the National Federal Army came in with tanks. And and rifles. Now, what I'm saying here is that there were a few individuals only, and they were basically grandmothers and young mothers and children and grandchildren who took the call to consciousness to stand up for peace, inner power, and righteousness of what is right in terms of the bones of our ancestors that were going to be dug up. Within that framework of 71 days, and there are many videos you can watch online around this issue, it seemed to be at a time of peace, which would have been in the 1970s, the one decade of peace we may have had in the last century, in fact, a call to conscience and a call to consciousness for individuals to stand up for what is right and righteous with a peaceful, nonviolent way, which is Gandhi's way and the way that always does work in the end. And that sparked a revolution, a divine spark of light and hope and faith and self determination for individuals and for groups that eventually became worldwide. It started across Canada for all the First Nations, Indigenous peoples, and around the world, indeed, idle no more. And it also started the Occupy movement, as you might say, like in Wall Street in Spain and all over the world now. So a few women and children standing up for what was right in 1990 showed the world that it is important, and the only way that freedom can be gained is to stand up for oneself as individuals and as small communities. And it does have a reverberating, echoing effect, the light spreading around the darkness on the planet. This Oka Crisis then has become a lighthouse, a beacon for further peoples, individuals, and groups to find the choice to be peace, power, and righteous in their own way. Your ancestors are with you now, wherever you are, and your inner power can serve you well as you become indelibly courageous and strong and righteous in who you are and how you want to be. And remember the self esteem and the self worth and the self empowerment that comes from actually taking the voice and speaking up and acting up is what will give you the freedom and the hope and the faith and the love that you know you are and you know you need. Stay tuned for part two. Skanagoa, as we say in Mohawk, the peace is great. Dr. Joseph Martin Donegalenqua, peace, power, and righteousness be you.